chair of the panel, chair of the session, Ambassador Kanta, uh, chairman of ICWA, who I believe is with us, another of my distinguished seniors and someone with whom I have had great pleasure and honor to work with, Dr. T.C. Raghavan, our colleagues from ASEAN-India Center of RIS, the Pathfinder Foundation, other colleagues from ICWA, from Asian Confluence, and of course the distinguished panelists. Namaskar, Ayubovan, Vanakkam, and very good afternoon to all of you. I, of course, join all other participants in thanking all the organizations and the organizers for this event and for, in particular, from my behalf, giving me this opportunity to participate, for giving me this singular honor to deliver the valedictory address. As I said, I feel uh, greatly honored, in particular, because I am doing so in the distinguished presence of Ambassador Kant as the chair, who is not only my distinguished senior from the Foreign Service, but also my distinguished predecessor here from 2009 to 2013, one of the most important years in the recent history of the bilateral relations, and where we started a number of initiatives. Many of them have come to very good fruition, and others had laid the foundation on which we are now trying to build. So, Excellencies and distinguished panelists, uh, being the last speaker does give me a certain advantage that I don't have to repeat many of the things which have been said earlier. But it also gives me a bit of a disadvantage that I nevertheless run the risk of repeating some of the things. So when I was wondering how to start and what to say, I thought that given the topic, which is deepening India-Sri Lanka ties, I thought half seriously that it might perhaps suffice for me to just say that in the present situation, at the present stage, perhaps the best way to deepen the India-Sri Lanka ties, is to implement quickly the deep port project of East Container Terminal and rest my case with that. But as I said, it was a half serious thought, and I decided that saying only that much won't do justice to the breadth and scale of the relations that India and Sri Lanka have, and nor, of course, to the honor that has been bestowed on me. So I would try to basically cover some of the pointers in the bilateral relations and the ties in general. But I would, if you permit, not mention some of the figures and some of the broad facts that have already been covered by the distinguished panelists and, of course, in the earlier session. And I would, of course, try and speak from my personal experience in so far about 5 months here in Sri Lanka. So the first thing which comes to my mind when I speak about or think about the India-Sri Lanka ties is, of course, these symbols which are present anywhere and everywhere, wherever we go in Sri Lanka, whether it is the Kalania temple, whether it is the Siripada or the Kadargama temple or Tirukiteshwar temple or St. Anthony's Church or Madhu Church, number of shrines and pilgrimage places which are all over the island, and their list is endless. I've mentioned a few only, but in many ways, when I visit them, then I think I know my own country better, and I know India more when I look at them, when I visit them, when I understand them. Similarly, I think I know Sri Lanka more the better I understand India. So why is it so? It is because, in my view, and as many of you already know, India and Sri Lanka can be considered to be civilizational twins, spiritual twins, which share a lot of common metrics of DNA, so to say. In fact, the Sinhalese word for brother is sahodaraya, which in similar Sanskrit and Hindi is sahodar, which means born from the same womb. So this is the extent of our closeness, of the close civilizational and historical ties that we have, and therefore it is no surprise that the government of India, under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, attaches the highest importance to promoting and strengthening our bilateral relations with Sri Lanka under our neighborhood first policy, and within that also strengthening the Buddhist ties between India and Sri Lanka and people-to-people ties is a very important pillar of the practice of diplomacy here. Uh, in this context, I am sure the distinguished participants know very well the new grant of $15 million, which was announced by Prime Minister Modi in the virtual summit with the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Mahinda Rajapaksa last month. And that we believe will go a long way in strengthening the Buddhist ties between India and Sri Lanka in all spheres, in all sectors of the activities related to this particular sphere. And also, we are very happy that Sri Lanka and we are working now on making Sri Lanka the first country to have an international flight arrive at the Kushinagar port, which has tremendous significance in Buddhism and also as a tourist place, as a place of sacred reverence in India. And we are working on making it possible for the first international flight to arrive at Kushinagar, which again is an important initiative of the government of India to make this airport an international airport. So we do hope that this will see forward movement. As I mentioned, the people-to-people ties form the rock foundation, the solid foundation on which India and Sri Lanka ties rest. And therefore, in my conversations with the senior leadership here, as well as in India, enormous importance has been attached to promoting tourism. And it would be recalled that last year, when the Prime Minister got elected for the second term and he was sworn in, Sri Lanka, he made a very special visit to Sri Lanka just to give the message. And this was in the aftermath of the Easter Sunday attacks that India stands with Sri Lanka. This was also a message to the international community that Prime Minister of India had come here and the country would be safe for people to come. And I am told that it led to increase in the number of tourists. Of course, later on, we have again been hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. But whenever we are out of the adverse impacts on the travel, I believe the Indian tourists will enjoy the Ramayana and the Buddhist circuits here once again, and there will be to and fro flow of tourists again restored to the previous levels and even surpassing the previous levels because we are working on a number of initiatives to enhance the connectivity. In fact, some mention was made of connectivity earlier by distinguished panelists and in question answer session also. We had started earlier the flight from Jaffna, and we will look at resuming it when the international air travel resumes. We would also look at connecting eastern parts of Sri Lanka, Batticaloa and Trincomalee through short-haul flights that would, we believe, be great help to people who wish to travel, different type of people for business, for pleasure, for family ties. And also, I'm told, I of course have been in Sri Lanka only for 5 months, but 5 decades ago, I'm told there used to be rail link up to a certain point and then a ferry could be taken. So it was a multimodal transport which was already in existence. We know that Government of India's policy of neighborhood first has an important component of enhancing connectivity and restoring connectivity wherever it used to exist in our neighborhood with our friends and partners and where it ceased to, for various reasons, exist. So we would certainly look at ferry services. I know I heard of you some time ago in this very discussion that it need not necessarily be commercially viable. It was not one of the ferry services, but the important point is which are the points that are going to be connected. So we believe that there is merit in affording the people more opportunities, more means to getting connected and remaining connected. So that is the context in which we will promote more tourism, more people-to-people contacts in every sphere. Sri Lanka, of course, when we speak of connectivity, Sri Lanka is a hub of connectivity through shipping, and it also aspires to be a hub for energy. That is among the priorities, the economic priorities of the new government as we hear it in Sri Lanka. So I think Sri Lanka is in a great position and India is also in a great position to leverage the shipping links and also build new facilities here, which can include the LNG facilities such as an FSRU to provide clean energy, green energy which will also do very well and go well with Sri Lanka's image and attraction as a major tourist destination. So this is something on which we are working with the government of Sri Lanka and with other partners. In the context of trade and investment, of course, the figures and many aspects of it have been brought out in previous presentations and question answer. I would simply flag a couple of points. One is that Atmanirbhar Bharat and self-reliant Sri Lanka, respectively, the priorities of the government of India and the government of Sri Lanka are, we see in them a great potential of mutual synergy and complementarity. They present opportunities for both the countries, for both our business communities to work together in a very synergized and complementary manner. Uh, Now, in the current situation, of course, there are challenges posed by the economic situation the world over, and some of the countries which were not in the pink of economic health even before COVID have experienced even more impactfully the consequences of the COVID situation and the constraints that it has brought about. So we do understand the some of the import restrictions which the government of Sri Lanka has imposed generally also. But being a large among the largest trade partner of Sri Lanka, those restrictions have hit the Indian exports quite significantly. So our hope certainly is that these restrictions prove more temporary, and certainly in those areas where these lifting the restrictions or relaxing those restrictions will help Sri Lankan economy and will help Sri Lankan people. We would hope that the alternative mechanisms or other mechanisms can be found, like credit facilities, and such mechanisms, whenever they can be found, wherever they can be found, can restore some of these imports into Sri Lanka, and it will be a win-win situation both for the economy of Sri Lanka and India and the exporters and importers on both sides. There are a number of points mentioned about the FTA and the ETCA. It was rightly mentioned that Sri Lanka is formulating a national trade policy, and perhaps the movement on ETCA will have to await the outcome of that. And one more point which was mentioned was about NTBs and some of these standards and regulations. I would say that in our experience, we have found that some of the perceptions about the NTBs are more about need of more awareness regarding the Indian standards and regulation systems. And as a measure to address that need, we have taken very specific measures to arrange interactions. Some of these and other interactions were referred to by various speakers, including Mr. Govindasamy. So I believe more such interaction between the traders, between the business community, with the help of business chambers, with the help of the High Commission, and I think this can result in greater understanding of what the requirements of the standards and regulations are. I think one more important aspect in promoting more trade between the two countries can be connecting the regions. And that's why I stressed connectivity in the beginning itself. There is a great requirement of investment, not only in the west and south of Sri Lanka, but also in the north and the east. And our effort would be to see in what ways we can leverage our geographical proximity and the knowledge that the people have about each other in both the countries. Uh, in the context of the emphasis in Sri Lanka on manufacturing in Sri Lanka, and as I mentioned earlier, self-reliant Sri Lanka, the opportunities are enormous, not only for investment-linked exports, but also for promoting manufacturing in Sri Lanka with the help of Indian investment in the field of pharmaceuticals, even apparels, electricals. There are a number of spheres in which government of Sri Lanka is formulating new policies, earmarking new zones, special zones. So we would look forward very enthusiastically to these policies and initiatives taking shape and presenting opportunity to Indian investors for bringing their expertise, their investment, the technological know-how to manufacture in Sri Lanka, not merely for Sri Lanka, but also to promote exports of the products manufactured here to other markets, to other destinations, including to Indian market. I think uh, uh, three areas suggest themselves. Information technology is one. As I said, pharmaceuticals is another, and I'm very happy to note that a big Indian player, HCL, has recently set up its facility in Sri Lanka, which they have plans to grow even more. And the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Rajapaksa, was very gracious in himself participating in the inauguration of the facility. That gave a very important signal and a very important message on the importance of promoting bilateral investment in the key areas, in the areas of requirement, where Sri Lanka will also benefit not merely from investment, but creating more skills and more opportunities for its youth. Uh, Deeper integration of the supply chains was spoken to by one of the distinguished participants. Uh, the uh, uh, the the one key aspect will be to create skills and enhance skills related to the industry or the investment that is going to come into Sri Lanka. And in that respect, we have noted with great attention the emphasis being put by the government of Sri Lanka on educational opportunities with a view to employability of the educated youth. And we already have capacity building programs which we run, but we will be initiating and launching more initiatives to fulfill these requirements and to partner Sri Lanka. I'm very sure, Excellencies and distinguished participants, that with clear and predictable policies, level playing field, and transparency, a diverse array of investors, foreign investors, will feel very encouraged and very confident of investing more and more in Sri Lanka and utilizing the opportunities which are now presenting themselves. Uh, the honorable chairman of this, the honorable chair of this session, Ambassador Kanta, is no stranger to development cooperation. So what do I say about that? But I would just say that many initiatives which had been begun in the time of the distinguished chair of the session, Ambassador Kanta, have come to fruition. These are landmark projects. These relate to housing, to other infrastructure, but uh, always, as you very well know, the pivotal place has been to the requirements of Sri Lanka. And therefore, again, we have noted with great attention the priority of the government of Sri Lanka now on new areas, apart from creation of skills, apart from creation of employment, on the new areas of water and sanitation. And in these areas, India's own experience of the last 5 or 6 years is something which we would be very happy to share. And I'm very pleased to share with this distinguished panel, excellencies and distinguished participants, that we are very closely engaged now with government of Sri Lanka to see how the Indian experience can can uh, can be beneficially shared with Sri Lanka to meet their requirements, whether it is in schools, whether it is in rural areas, whether it is in urban clusters. The need for sanitation, for promoting sanitation facilities, maintaining and making sanitation facilities, and also providing water, potable water, as well as water for irrigation. Uh, I'm very also happy also to mention, especially because Ambassador Kanta is in the chair, that the high impact community development projects, I know, sir, the ideas, some of those ideas were generated during your tenure here as the High Commissioner. We have successfully completed the 5 years of the MOU, and very recently, both the governments have agreed to extend this MOU with for another 5 years. And I hope that this MOU will now be signed. I think the Sri Lankan cabinet has accorded its approval to signing this MOU for its 5 year extension very recently. Uh, I was not present here, unfortunately, because I had to attend to some urgent business requirement at another place. But I was mentioned that when my distinguished colleague and good friend Ambassador Colombo was speaking about was delivering his keynote address in the first session, he mentioned, I think rightly, about lack of trust. And in the development cooperation area, there is a very interesting example which I would like to mention for the benefit of those participants and delegates who may not know about it. Some time ago, there was this idea to launch an ambulance service, which is now called Suvas area. The number is now ubiquitous, very famous, 1990. But at one point, when this idea was mooted, uh, uh, it did not look an easy thing to do. And I was told here when I arrived, and after a few weeks, months, I was told by a very senior political figure who at that point was in opposition that High Commissioner, we oppose this idea tooth and nail, but even I am convinced now. Uh, that's the senior dignitary said that even I am convinced now that this was one of the best development cooperation projects that has come to Sri Lanka. Now this SUVAS area service, as we all know, covers the entire island, and this is something which has benefited the people of the country, people of Sri Lanka, especially in the COVID times also. So this was a project, this was an idea which was opposed because there were some doubts, some questions. I don't need to go at this platform of what type of doubts or questions they were, but it is important to understand here that India's development cooperation with all its partners, all its development partners, including Sri Lanka, is driven entirely and exclusively by the requirement of its development partners, and we do not bring any agenda to the table. I believe and I have full confidence that we will continue to add on to the development cooperation work that we do with Sri Lanka to the benefit of the people of Sri Lanka. And that is because, as Prime Minister Modi had said, that the growth of India is like a tide, like a wave. Where it comes, all the boats are lifted. So that being the philosophy, that being the concept, we will continue to take on more requirements, and according to our resources and possibilities, we'll try and do whatever we can. I think two more points that I would like to make is that there is, of course, the deepening of the India-Sri Lanka ties is one aspect of the topic, but the other aspect of the topic is the New World Order in the context of the New World Order. Now, there can be many views about the world order, there can be many views about what is new in it, but there is one thing which is certain. And the most important thing that is certain about this world order is the uncertainty. There are numerous uncertainties, there are numerous challenges. Some of them have been spoken about by other distinguished delegates. But the I think we all know that nothing epitomizes these uncertainties today as much as the COVID situation does. And obviously, it has impacted, as I mentioned earlier, the economies, everything in a normal life that we used to practice. But there are also certainties, fortunately. And as a practitioner of diplomacy, as the High Commissioner of India in Sri Lanka, I think the one certainty that is there for me and that is very helpful, that certainty is like the pole star, or what we call in Hindi the Dhruv Tara, is the deep commitment on the part of our leadership at the highest level, deep commitment to strengthen these ties. And that gives me, as the country's High Commissioner, all the strength, all the guidance to continue and to march forward for promoting these ties. Now, we have heard about India first or Sri Lanka first, neighborhood first. I will not go into those areas. I would just simply say that there are few examples uh, in practice of diplomacy, not merely the exchange of visits at the highest level, which you all are very well aware of, but also the virtual bilateral summit, which was a first for Sri Lanka, which was a first for us in the neighborhood also. uh, I mentioned about the April 2019 visit of Prime Minister Modi. These are all examples of the deep commitment that leadership has on both the sides. Now, India, it is understood, has been a reliable partner of Sri Lanka and will continue to be so. And that is the commitment which our leadership has. There is also commitment on the leadership that has also a public knowledge that on certain projects which are a win-win proposition for both sides. And the second certainty which I wanted to mention is the imperative to implement these projects very quickly because time is of essence. Particularly when we talk of COVID-related economic recovery, when we talk of the prospects, when we talk of future, time and tide, as they say, wait for none. And if we do not move with the time and implement these projects, not only these projects and their concepts become outdated and perhaps even challenged, but sometimes we may be overtaken by events. The other certainty between India and Sri Lanka is the, 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 the will at the functional level to cooperate. The operational level, uh, 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 a reference was made to the bureaucracy. I believe bureaucrats all over the world are much maligned. I don't wish to enter any contention on that area. That may be so. But my experience in the neighborhood in my career so far, and here in Sri Lanka particularly, has been that whenever there has been a need, the bureaucracies, the people on the ground have always risen to the opportunity, have always risen to the challenge to bring together the best possible cooperation. And I would just give two examples. One is, of course, the COVID situation. You all are aware of the details of the assistance, so I will not go into that. But it has been made possible only because there has been enormous goodwill and cooperation, not merely at the high political level, but also at the level of the bureaucracies, at the level of the people who actually are on the field. Second example is the HADR matters, wherever, whether it was the flood situation or even now the empty new diamond case, that proved once again that whether it is Indian Navy or Indian Coast Guard, if a situation is to be addressed, then we are just a phone call away. Jalashwa, the ship which came to take the Indians stranded in Sri Lanka back home. It was the same ship which had come in 2017, 3 years ago, for flood release. So there are many examples here where there are very willingness to cooperate and take the cooperation forward. And I must say that at the bureaucratic level, at the level of the services, there is tremendous cooperation. There is also close cooperation for maritime security and safety, which has been the need has been felt more after the Easter Sunday attack, whether it is in interdicting drugs traffic or whether it is in facing the challenges of radicalism and terrorism in our region, and keeping the sea, the open seas safe. I think Sri Lanka and India both have a stake in openness of oceans and their bona fide use, and in upholding the rule-based international order, which is underpinned by the rule of law and transparency, freedom of navigation in international seas, and I think respect of territorial integrity and sovereignty, which is concomitant of this. So I believe that we both, as diverse democracies, have a stake in keeping our waters, our maritime environment safe, and cooperate more and more in that area. Uh, Lastly, I believe that one certainty in the world, again, is the need for multipolarity, the need for a multipolar world, for, as External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar said, multipolar Asia. We need multiplicity of engagements. As I mentioned, India and Sri Lanka both are diverse democracies, both are pluralist societies. Pluralism, respect for pluralist conduct is inherent in our fabric, and both for our internal conduct as well as for our relations outside. Our own experience in India has shown that adaptability and flexibility in making and exercising these choices in international relations has given us the options, which has helped us avoid over dependence on any one source, and therefore has helped us avoid a scenario of restrictive choices which could have been detrimental to us. As Sri Lanka's neighbor and friend with civilizational ties, we do hope that the concept of neutrality, the prescription or the practice of the concept of neutrality, will not overlook the more commonplace imperatives of history, geography, and civilizational ties. So I believe to sum up, I would say, and I'm very sorry that I have overshot the time allocated to me, but I would like to sum up by saying that this is a great time for anyone to be a High Commissioner of India in Sri Lanka, because, as I said, there is a great deal of commitment at the highest level. There are great opportunities. Uh, Again, the chair of the panel, Ambassador Kanta, is very well familiar with the geography of this office where I am sitting. If I look out to my right to the sea, I see a limitless expanse of water, almost extending to the infinity. That, to me, is the metaphor for the potential of India-Sri Lanka ties. And every day I come to the office, I do hope that a few ships will come ashore with success, and a few ships will get launched on happy and successful voyages. With that, I thank everyone, especially the chair and the distinguished delegates and participants. Thank you very much.